but also it is a fully people-centered model, as I have used it to guide my advising philosophy, my interactions with colleagues, and my organizational approach to my office, including how I develop and evaluate staff. Appreciative advising falls under the greater appreciative education umbrella. According to Bloom, Hudson, He, and Conkle, appreciative education is a framework for developing high-quality education on both an individual and organizational level. It provides an intentional and positive approach to bettering education enterprises by focusing on the strengths and potentials of individuals and organizations to accomplish co-created goals. Appreciative education, through the transferable application of the 6 phases of appreciative advising, is being used in all facets of colleges and universities, including the classroom, financial aid, admissions, career services, athletics, academic support services, academic advising, assessment, and the list goes on and on. If interested, I invite you to review a comprehensive, although non-exhaustive, annotated bibliography that can be accessed at www.appreciativeadvising.net. The Journal of Appreciative Education is another great resource if you might be looking for ways that this approach can be more specifically applied to your functional area. And if you can't find anything written, then you are encouraged to write and submit an article to the Journal of Appreciative Education. The editors welcome submissions on innovative ways that appreciative education is being used in practice, for instance. The appreciative approach requires us to shift our mindsets from characteristically deficit-based, problem-oriented thinking that most often has been embraced by higher education to a positive, proactive approach that instead focuses on potential and possibilities, and that is assets and strengths-based. Please hear me. In this approach, it isn't that we don't recognize or address the negative, but that we first begin by accentuating the positive. Appreciative education and appreciative advising are theoretically grounded in a number of theories, most notably appreciative inquiry. Appreciative inquiry was developed by Dr. David Cooperrider at Case Western Reserve University and is defined by Cooperrider and Whitney as a cooperative search for the best in people, their organizations, and the world around them. Appreciative inquiry involves the art and practice of asking questions that strengthen a system's capacity to heighten positive potential. In 2002, Jenny Bloom and Nancy Archer Martin co-published a seminal article entitled Incorporating Appreciative Inquiry into Academic Advising, which essentially launched the appreciative advising movement. Centered around the concept of asking positive questions, appreciative advising adapts and expands the 4 dimensions of appreciative inquiry to the 6 phases that we will learn about today. Appreciative advising also adopts O'Banion's definition that advising is so much more than merely scheduling courses. Ideally, to help students schedule courses, we need to first understand the bigger picture, including who they are, where they've been, what their hobbies and career interests are, and what they envision accomplishing in life. We can gather this data through application of the appreciative advising framework and by equipping ourselves with an arsenal of positive, open-ended questions to ask students whenever an opportunity presents itself. And that might include a random conversation with a student in a campus elevator, a conversation with a student assistant in your office, a discussion with a student club or organization that you advise, a scheduled appointment with students to discuss whatever they are on your calendar to see you about, or perhaps a student you mentor, as just a few examples. And does appreciative advising work? Why, yes, it does. In the next few slides, I will briefly share an overview of some of the data that has been compiled. In fall 2006 pilot, the appreciative advising approach was used with students at the University of North Carolina, Greensboro, who were readmitted to the university after academic dismissal. Students were asked to voluntarily commit to several appreciative advising sessions over their first semester back. Of the students who chose to participate, 90% were eligible to return the following semester and had earned a 2.86 average GPA, compared to the students who didn't participate, of whom only 33% were eligible to return and had earned a mean GPA of 1.29. Our next institution featured is Rollins College that implemented an appreciative advising pilot program during the spring 2011 semester. Data indicated that good standing trends went up, suspensions went down, term GPA went up, and cumulative GPA restabilized. What is truly remarkable is that Rollins College already boasted a 91.3% retention rate in 2009. However, upon conclusion of the Appreciative Advising Pilot Program, retention rates had increased to 95%. Finally, my colleague Dr. Claire Robinson ran the Academic Coaching and Engagement, or ACE, program at the University of South Carolina. She tracked the average GPA of first-year students who were on academic probation during the fall 2010 and 2011 semesters. In both years, with each additional ACE appointment, students' average semester GPAs significantly increased. Not only has appreciative advising benefited students, but also those who use this framework as well. My colleague, Dr. Nancy Howell, conducted a qualitative dissertation study at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, where she concluded that advisors who utilized the appreciative advising framework were better able to utilize their strengths, skills, and talents, were more effective advisors, developed stronger advisor-student relationships resulting in greater perception of job satisfaction, and perceived more positive relationships with coworkers, family, friends, and others. So consider yourselves forewarned. Appreciative advising offers a 6-phase framework to optimize interactions with students. This framework is built on the concept of an appreciative mindset, or an intentional commitment to look for and cultivate the best in students. Appreciative advising scholars Bloom, Hudson, and He explained, embracing the appreciative mindset, advisors intentionally use positive, active, and attentive listening and questioning strategies to build trust and rapport with students, or disarm, uncover students' strengths and skills based on their past successes, or discover, encourage and be inspired by student stories and dreams, or dream, co-construct action plans with students to make their goals a reality, or design, support students as they carry out their plans, or deliver, and challenge both themselves and their students to do and become even better, or don't settle. Please remember that the principles within these phases are transferable and applicable to all of our areas of responsibility, including our work with students, staff, and colleagues. Applying the appreciative advising framework requires an appreciative mindset, which includes 6 main ingredients. First, caring and believing in the potential of each student with whom you meet. We recognize that each student with whom we interact, formally or informally, has strengths, skills, talents, and dreams, and is worthy. Second, that we possess a grateful attitude for the work that we do, that we remember that what we do is truly a privilege. Third, as appreciative educators, we work to continually get better at what we do. I hope that everyone participating in this webinar is doing so because you are lifelong learners and seek to attain new levels of excellence in the work with your students. 4, remember that we hold power in the work that we do, and that as nice as I am certain we all are, we can still be intimidating to students. 5, Dr. Saavedra, my undergraduate advisor, once told me to always listen to people's stories, and that is what appreciative advising is all about, being insatiably curious about who students are, where they've been, and where they're going. Finally, as effective educators, we need to be culturally aware and responsive to the uniqueness of each of our students individually, and generally to be aware of the diversity represented within our student bodies on each of our respective campuses, so that programming and advising can be specifically tailored to best support their success. We begin with the first phase of appreciative advising, disarm, where we recognize the importance of first impressions and create a safe and welcoming environment for students. Although you may not implement every phase of appreciative advising each time you meet a student, you will engage the disarm phase every time. This phase is key to quickly helping you develop trust and rapport with your students that is needed to fully engage the other phases of the framework. Is the way you disarm cause for alarm? Here are 4 things that you can incorporate into your work today to better set students at ease. First, assess your web presence. Do you even have a web presence? Is your photo updated on your web profile? Beyond stating your name, title, campus address, phone number, and email address, is your web profile personable? Do students and others gain a sense of who you are and why you love to do what you do, for example? Second, have you sat in the chair where your students and others ordinarily sit in your office? Do you have a chair on which students can sit? Is it comfortable? Have you checked to make sure that it doesn't squeak? Third, what do students and others see when they walk into and sit in your office? How would they describe your office? Warm and cozy, messy and disorganized, cold and sterile? Work to make it personable. Consider framing and displaying some of your favorite pictures or artwork, for example. As a native Texan, I keep an homage to Texas on one of the shelves in my office that always makes for interesting banter, and I place a copy of Dr. Seuss's Oh, the Places You Will Go in the student's direct line of vision so that they can subconsciously be thinking about their possibilities. And finally, what about the waiting area in your office suite, if you have one, where students might sit and wait to meet with you? Who greets them and how are they greeted when they walk into your office suite? How a student is welcomed into the office space helps to set the tone for students' perception of their experience with you and even helps to formulate their impression of their greater campus experience. Next, how we greet and verbally interact with students is another critical key to disarming them. For example, "Hi Sam, I'm Amanda. It's great to meet you. I've been looking forward to meeting you and getting to know you better. So as we walk this way to my office, tell me, Sam, what's been the highlight of your day so far?" Did you pay attention to what I did there? I called the student by name and told the student how I preferred to be called. In my case, I prefer to be called by my first name, Amanda, but some people may prefer a more formal approach, such as Dr. Cuevas, and that is okay. Just be sure to gently signal to the student your preference. Because I'm better at remembering faces than names, I deliberately repeated Sam's name and wove it in multiple times into the conversation to help me remember it. And I asked a question that might be unrelated to the purpose of the meeting to briefly engage in small talk to break the ice. Other suggestions include using inclusive pronouns such as we and us, and incorporating feedback, including reflecting to the students what you understand or hear them saying, and inviting students to give you feedback if there is something that they don't understand. Given that the majority of our communication is nonverbal through gestures and tone, we should pay attention to the following. Do you warmly greet students with a firm but not crushing or flimsy handshake and a smile? Do you then maintain a relaxed and comfortable posture to help put the students at ease? When students meet with you, do they feel like they've been cast in Ferris Bueller's Day Off? Bueller, Bueller. Or do you utilize vocal variety? Do you make good eye contact with students, not staring them down, but also not looking off or away when talking with them? Have you silenced your cell phone, office phone, and volume on your computer? If you are expecting an emergency or important phone call, inform the student at the beginning of the meeting if possible. Students have always been very understanding, but if I don't inform them, they might otherwise find it rude if I were to take a call mid-meeting. Their time is valuable, and they are the priority for that window of time during my day. Lean forward, nod, and smile throughout the conversation to show engagement and interest. The second phase of appreciative advising is discover. During this phase, we use positive, open-ended questions to draw out what students enjoy doing, their strengths and their passions. It is important to listen to each answer carefully before asking the next positive question. I love this definition of discover, to identify a person as a potentially prominent performer. I am always looking for the best in others, looking to identify their strengths and discovering their potential. During this phase, we especially need to be great listeners. I love the Chinese symbol for to listen because it requires that we be fully present and that we give our students our undivided attention. Parker Palmer aptly explained, undivided attention means forgetting about yourself and acting as if you had no other purpose on earth than to care for this human being. In this phase, we ask questions to solicit our students' stories, and we listen for their strengths, skills, passions, and past accomplishments. Depending on your role and function on your campus, you might consider asking some of these questions on your website or in print materials that your office disseminates. For example, a few years ago, the Career Services Office at Grand Valley State University adapted the Discover phase and developed an effective 5 questions campaign. They asked, what are my interests, passions, and values? What are my skills and abilities? How do these relate to my major and my future career? How do I pick a major or choose between multiple majors? What career paths are connected to the major I chose? They printed these questions on posters, pluggers, table tents, and other media that were distributed across campus to engage the campus community. I would also encourage you to employ these behaviors with your colleagues. Just a few days ago, I learned about colleague maps and included the link to the blog post on the bottom of this slide if you are interested in learning more. Essentially, the concept of colleague maps is like the discover phase to ask positive, open-ended questions to get to know your colleagues better and develop more effective relationships at work. Maybe this could be an activity you facilitate during your next staff meeting or office potluck. Regardless of whether we are working with students or colleagues, it is important that we are authentic. People smell BS from a mile away, but they really open up when they sense that you are your true self with them and can be trusted. During this phase, it may be necessary to self-disclose your own personal stories as appropriate. You should be aware that you may ask questions that the respondent has never thought about before, and you may need to give ample time to respond. Therefore, we need to be comfortable with silence. Additionally, we need to be non-judgmental, believe in the potential of each person, be mindful of diversity and multicultural issues that may be present, and celebrate the uniqueness of each person with whom we have the privilege to interact. If a student presented you with this transcript, what grades would you immediately notice? I would anticipate that most of you would first notice the F, right? But in keeping with an appreciative mindset, what else would you notice? Would you notice the 2 A's in English and History and the B's in Biology and Social Studies? Would you also notice that the student hasn't missed any classes? How would you begin a conversation with a student? Remember that it isn't that we ignore the negative, in this case the F in math, but that we would begin by accentuating the positive. Strengths guru Marcus Buckingham tells us that the answer to the F lies in the A's. Don't you think the student likely feels horrible and embarrassed about the F? The student will likely be more receptive and less defensive when beginning the conversation with a positive, which can better help to work through strategies and solutions when discussing the F in math. Look at this, Sam. You earned an A in English and history. Great job. What strategies did you use to earn the A's in history and English? You also earned B's in biology and social studies. What worked well for you in these classes? Then you could ask, now tell me about math, being careful not to prejudge. For all we know, the student might have slept through the final exam or could have had a major tragedy outside of school that resulted in poor performance in this class. Or maybe the student had an undiagnosed learning disability. Or maybe the student really struggles with math and needs to be connected with campus resources, but had a difficult time connecting with a course instructor and other resources because in addition to going to school full-time, is working a full-time job to help support a family and isn't on campus at hours when these resources would be available. We won't know until we discover what is going on, but the bottom line is that as appreciative educators, we recognize that the student shows potential and begin the conversation by accentuating the positive. Some example discover questions include, describe 3 life events that have made you into the person you are today. Since coming to this institution, what is something you've accomplished that you are proud of? Who are the important role models in your life and why? What qualities in them do you hope to emulate? And I encourage you to create discover questions of your own. The third phase is dream, where we help students formulate a vision of what they might become and then assist them in developing their life and career goals. What I love about this phase is the opportunity to explore the possibilities and to imagine what could be. When I was founding director of the Frederick Meyer Office of Fellowships at Grand Valley State University, our motto in the office was Dream Big. Here is a picture of the dream board that we created in which we asked students all over campus to write out their biggest dreams for their future. The Frederick Meyer Honors College has since adopted this idea and asks each coming first-year student to write down their dream. The dreams are displayed during the academic year and then are filed to be redistributed to the student upon graduation. What ideas do you have to inspire dreaming on your campus? Importantly, as appreciative educators, we are looking for the congruency between what we have discovered about a student and what they are dreaming about during this phase. As an example, I distinctly remember a student who met with me when I served as Assistant Dean for Student Affairs and the Medical Scholars Program, then one of the nation's largest MD-PhD programs at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. I often met with undergraduate students who wanted to find out what they needed to do to gain admission to our medical school. The student handed me her transcript and I quickly noted that she had enrolled in and was excelling in a number of dance courses, but her grades in her science courses were spotty. When I asked the student, what motivates you to pursue a career in medicine, her eyes welled up with tears. I then replied, I see the tears in your eyes. Can you tell me what they are about? She then explained that she had grown up on the south side of Chicago and that her parents had always pushed her to become a doctor. She confessed that it had always been their dream for her, but never her own. She was struggling in her science classes and didn't enjoy them, but she persisted because she didn't want to disappoint her parents. I then asked, if you could have your wish, what career would you really want to pursue? When I asked her this question, her face lit up as she shared that she dreamed of opening her own dance studio. She loved hip-hop dance in particular and wanted to make dance more accessible to those where she had grown up. So we began to explore her options and what could be. We brainstormed things she would need to do to make this dream become a reality, including adding a business minor to give her background to run her own business. We strategized ways to approach her parents about her change of plans and helped her understand their perspective, that they likely desired for her to lead a better life than they had been able to provide, and that deep down they really wanted what was best for her and for her to be successful. To make a long story short, the student did talk with her parents when she went home for Thanksgiving that semester. She compiled a business plan, put numbers on paper for them to see what it would take for her to pursue this dream, and they came to a compromise. They would support her plan as long as she completed her pre-med prerequisites. That way, if her dance studio dream didn't come to fruition, she would have medicine as an alternate plan. To be honest, I don't know what happened to this student, but I sure hope that she's living a dream come true. This is just one example of the many students with whom I've met. And sometimes dreams won't come true. It may be because a student doesn't have the grades or test scores to get into the program of their choice, or they may find that their childhood dream has changed as they've grown up. As appreciative educators, we need to help students understand that there is always more than one right answer, and to help them develop parallel plans rather than backup plans or plan Bs. When students develop parallel plans, it is empowering because one plan is just as worthy as another. They will have well thought through the parallel plans and will be able to apply their skills, strengths, talents, and knowledge to an alternative course of action. When I have advised pre-med students, I always ask them to develop a parallel plan as I wanted them to be prepared in case for whatever reason they might not gain admission to medical school or that they find their goals changing. When we work with students, we need to check our attitude. How we approach students as they walk through this process is critical. For example, we might look over to students' transcript and see that they haven't been performing well in their science classes, which very well could mean that they might not ultimately be strong candidates for medical school. But there may be more to the story that we need to discover, or it may be that we need to help students explore the possibilities. We must remember that they have strengths and skills to succeed and make an impact somewhere, and we can help them figure it out. But how we approach the process is critical. Will we be dream busters or dream promoters? Another student who I mentored at Grand Valley State University comes to mind. She was an international student who has always dreamed of becoming a physician and has a profound desire to improve the healthcare system in her country. However, over time it became evident that she wasn't going to be able to gain admission to medical school, at least not directly out of undergrad, but she was well positioned to pursue a degree in public health. With my encouragement and the encouragement of a faculty member, she now is pursuing her master's degree in public health at one of the nation's top schools. She still hopes to attend medical school one day, but for now she is content pursuing her parallel plan, and I know she will achieve great things in the years ahead. You see, I see myself in my students. Do you ever see yourself in yours? Had my undergraduate advisor not gotten to know me, had she not cared enough to request, Amanda, will you please do me a favor and look up this graduate program in student affairs and tell me what you think, I would likely be pursuing a career in public policy as I had intended, rather than making an impact in higher education. What happens when dreams don't come? I will admit that I have gone through rough patches when I haven't been able to dream. Have you? And sometimes our students hit these spots too. For some students, they have never been taught how to dream or have never been given permission to dream. Some of our students come to our campuses from very challenging circumstances whose reality at home is drastically different from the life they encounter at college. Sometimes we have to teach students how to dream and engender hope within them. By engendering hope, I mean GPA, not grade point average, but what C.J. Snyder, the developer of hope theory, coined goals, pathways, and agencies. Through hope theory, we help students articulate goals to pursue, identify various pathways or strategies to achieve them, and cultivate agency, or the self-efficacy and internal motivation necessary to attain goals. We essentially help students strategize, design, and deliver an action plan, which we will cover in the upcoming phases. Here are some examples of dream questions you might consider asking your students. When you were 8 years old, what did you say you wanted to be when you grew up? What about now? If time, salary, education, and fear were no obstacles, what would you really want to do? And here's a question I'd like to ask all of you. If 10 or 20 years from now, you could be on the cover of any magazine or journal, which one would it be, and for what are you being recognized? When I ask students this question, sometimes I get the deer in the headlights look, but most often I get the twinkle in students' eyes. What was your initial response? What did you feel like when I asked you the question? When was the last time you hit the pause button on your busy life to dream? When was the last time you asked students about their dreams? When was the last time you asked a colleague or your staff? When was the last time that your office staff, department, or division dreamed about where you are headed as a team and what you might collectively be able to accomplish? When you strategically plan, do you SWOT or do you SOAR? Through SWOT analysis, a team assesses strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. But through positive psychology-based SOAR, teams explore strengths, opportunities, aspirations, and desired results, a shift in focus aimed to unleash a team's potential. The design phase is where we help students develop concrete, incremental, and achievable goals. Most important to this phase is that we co-create a plan of action. Although some students might prefer a prescription, we know that students will be more inclined to pursue their goals when they are part of developing them. This is a fundamental human principle. Whether we are advising a student or setting goals for the year with our staff, we will be more inclined to buy in and achieve goals when the person needing to accomplish the goal is part of creating it. Good goals spell out exactly what needs to be accomplished. They are not vague or too difficult. They are challenging but manageable and attainable. Think baby steps. small goals to accomplish big goals. We also want to set realistic timelines when developing an action plan. As educators, we also need to be mindful of the curse of knowledge. We oftentimes don't even realize the jargon that we speak on our respective campuses and within our respective fields. I bet we could come up with an entire laundry list if we put pen to paper for the next minute. And we often become oblivious to it because it becomes second nature. Students oftentimes don't want to appear dumb or uninformed, so they may not be inclined to ask us if they don't know what we're talking about. So as appreciative educators, let's be mindful of the terminology that we use, checking in with students to ask for feedback if they don't understand, and being aware to explain certain terms as needed. Being aware of the curse of knowledge can be especially important when it comes to making effective referrals. For example, I might encourage a Grand Valley State University student to go to SASE. Well, what the heck is SASE? A person? A place? SASE is the Student Academic Success Center located on the second floor of the Student Services building on the Allendale campus, and they provide tutoring, advising for undecided majors, and other services. Making effective referrals is another key strategy to integrate into your work with students. Be well connected on your campus and within your community. Beyond just referring students to other people and places on campus, how familiar are you with where these people and places are located? What will the student experience be in finding these people and places? When was the last time that you took a stroll about your campus and wandered inside into key offices where you most often refer students to know what the students can expect? How easy or difficult might it be for students to navigate campus to find the person or office where they have been referred? Also, do you stay in the know with what is happening on your campus? Do you frequently read the campus paper and pay attention to event postings? Are you familiar with high-impact practices on your campus, such as study abroad, undergraduate research, service learning, and so on, that can help enhance undergraduate students' experience? Who are key faculty with whom you can connect students to possibly get involved in undergraduate research or talk about career opportunities within their respective fields? Whenever possible, I like to be a door opener for students. For example, if I suggest that a student meet with a faculty or staff member on campus, I usually will send an email to contact and will contact this student on that email to introduce them. It is then up to the student to follow through, but I find that taking 2 seconds to send an introductory email really makes a difference. There are other times when it is needed that I personally walk the students to an office. For example, on occasion, I have had a student who needs to speak with someone in the counseling center. In these cases, I will discreetly walk the student over to the counseling center, particularly if I feel that the student will not likely go on their own. At the end of the day, however, we have to remember that students are the CEOs of their own lives. As appreciative educators, we help students learn how to make decisions. We discuss the pros and cons of their options, but ultimately we must let them live out the consequences of their actions for better or for worse. Please hear me out. I'm not talking about if a student is a threat to themselves or others. I am talking about such decisions as which opportunities they want to pursue. As we work with students, we want to encourage them to listen to and trust their gut. My colleague Bryant Hudson used the coin toss as an effective tool to help students make a decision. He would pull out a quarter and say, heads it will be this, or tails it will be this. He would then flip the coin and, not showing the student the outcome, ask, what were you hoping it would be? Here are some design questions to ask students. I particularly like this one. Are we pushing ourselves to create the best plan possible? The next phase is deliver, where students follow through on their plans, and we as appreciative educators are there for them when they stumble. We believe in them every step of the way and help them continue to update and refine their dreams as they go. Or as my grandfather used to say, you must plan your work and work your plan. During this phase, we want to review what we've accomplished in this session. We want to review the students and our own responsibilities and clarify who is responsible for what by when. It is important that if you tell a student that you will follow up on something, that you do it. Although I recognize that we all get busy and students often can be understanding, not following through not only sets a poor example for the student, but it also is a great way to lose a student's trust that sometimes has taken time to build. You might consider writing a sticky note, adding the task to your to-do list, or setting a reminder on your calendar to be sure to follow up with a student. Do encourage the student to contact you with any problems or concerns. Reassure them that you are there for them even if they find their plans or goals changing. This is an area that I have found to be a particular challenge because oftentimes students don't want to disappoint me when we've spent so much time planning. However, I work hard to convey to students that I am there for them, that I'm their biggest cheerleader, and that my ultimate goal is to help them succeed and figure out what it is that they need to be doing. We want to reiterate our confidence in the student that they can indeed accomplish what we've talked about and end the conversation on a positive note. Noel Teacher reminds us that our jobs as leaders is to energize others. Each interaction that we have with others will either positively or negatively impact them. As an appreciative educator, I strive to positively impact those with whom I interact and help to create a positive environment wherever I am planted. Some questions you might ask students during the deliver phase include, what will you do if you run into roadblocks? How and when will you keep me updated on your progress? What will you do if you think your goals may be changing? The final phase of appreciative advising is don't settle. In this phase, we challenge our students to raise their internal bar of self-expectations as well as challenge ourselves to do the same. Don't settle essentially is about reaching for new levels of excellence. During this phase, we challenge and support our students to facilitate their growth. We must get to know and care about our students to raise the bar to a new level of challenge for our students. We know that students generally will rise to higher expectations. As students achieve success after success, they engage in virtuous cycles where they build confidence in continuing to succeed. A couple of months ago, Jenny Bloom and I had the honor of meeting one of our former students for dinner. We hadn't seen him in 10 years. He now is a successful physician, married to a beautiful woman, a physician herself, and they have an adorable baby boy. As we laughed and caught up, I got goosebumps remembering a crucial conversation we had with him and his twin brother while they were undergraduate students at Illinois. Fall semester of their junior year, they, like many of our students, were over-involved and over-committed in student organizations and undergraduate research. Consequently, their grades began to fall. Jenny and I had a crucial conversation, gave them a gentle kick in the pants, if you will, about the consequences of their grade slipping. That it likely would mean that they wouldn't have the grades to get into the summer research program of their choice and even possibly not be able to gain admission to medical school. You see, we would have been fine had they been performing to the best that they could, but we and they knew that they were slacking, and we all knew that they could do better. We raised the bar. The brothers signed a compact to hold themselves accountable. I met with them every week for a semester to set goals for the week and prioritize activities, and Jenny rewarded them with a special dinner at the end of the semester. As we sat around the dinner table, I shuddered at the thought of, would we be sitting here discussing these accomplishments and successes had we not had that conversation? This former student met his now beautiful wife that summer following this conversation as they were both in the same undergraduate research program together. These brothers have thanked us for believing in them and for challenging them to bring their best. It mattered. George Koo and colleagues have described an ethic of positive restlessness where we as people and institutions are self-reflective and consistent in our pursuit to improve. May we as appreciative educators encourage ourselves, our students, and our colleagues to become our best selves and in turn create thriving and successful institutions. One of my favorite quotes that I often shared with students pursuing nationally competitive fellowships is, shoot for the moon because the least that can happen is that you will fall among the stars. I hope that we all can be honest and realistic with our students, and then let's hope that they won't settle for anything less. We often can't control what happens on our entire campuses, but we often can positively impact our spheres of influence and can create what Jim Collins calls pockets of greatness. When students come to meet with me in the four walls of my office, I commit to making that exchange a positive and meaningful one. Where are your spheres of influence on your campus? Perhaps your office, a classroom, a department, or a division? Let's commit to creating pockets of greatness within them. Here are some don't settle questions to ask students. You have done great so far, but what is one thing that you could do even better? If I challenged you to raise your own internal bar of expectations, what would that mean? If you could become your best self, what would that look like? And here's a don't settle question for you. I'd like for you to take a moment to jot down your response. What would happen if I challenged you to become the best appreciative educator that you could possibly become? What is one step that you will take today to move in this direction? Congratulations! You now have learned the 6 phases of appreciative advising, and hopefully you've identified many principles that you already employ in your daily practice, as well as some new ways to integrate aspects of this positive, student-centered approach into your unique work with college students. So where do we go from here? As I wrap up this webinar, I can't help but think about some graduating seniors with whom I have met. It has been my experience that in the weeks preceding graduation, I inevitably meet with a few students who share, "My friend said that I really needed to come meet with you. I'm graduating and have no idea what I'm going to do next." I then will proceed with asking the students a battery of questions pulled from my appreciative advising arsenal. Although I am glad that I had the opportunity to have the conversation with these students, I often wonder what the students' experiences might have been had someone at the institution asked them these questions much earlier, junior, sophomore, or even freshman year, rather than right before graduation their senior year. I can't help but wonder what the college student experience would look like if more of us found ways to purposefully integrate appreciative advising into our work with students at myriad points and intersections along their collegiate journeys. So I close with a question that my 4th grade teacher had posted in red capital letters on the front wall of our classroom the entire year. What if? What if you intentionally integrated principles of appreciative advising into your professional work and spheres of influence on your respective college and university campuses? What then could be? What should be? What will be? Colleagues, the answers are up to you, and I can't wait to learn about what you will accomplish. Happy innovating. Thank you all for your time and attention today. To learn more about appreciative advising or appreciative education, please reference the handout that you were provided. Additionally, if I may be of further assistance to you, or if you would be interested in having a member of our national team present on your campus, please feel free to contact me. At this time, I will turn the webinar back over to Dr. Katie Madden to facilitate the question and answer session.
Amanda, thank you so much for this introduction to appreciative advising. We now have some time to respond to any questions that participants have, so we'll open the discussion to the audience. Again, please type any questions you have into the question dialog box you see on your screen. So while some of you are considering questions and typing those in, we have one question to begin with. So Amanda, this seems like a very time-intensive technique. What are some strategies for an advisor with a heavy advising load?
That is a really great question, and I'm so glad you asked it. I get that question a lot, and I realize that many of us do have advising loads. When I was pre-professional advisor at Grand Valley, I had 12 back-to-back 30-minute advising appointments day in and day out for weeks on end. And some people think, gosh, this sounds like it's going to take a lot more time. Actually, it doesn't take any more time than you generally already have. And again, as I mentioned, you're not necessarily going to work through all 6 phases in one sitting with a student. You're going to pick and choose, and you'll find too that these phases get integrated in. They don't necessarily work in sequential order. And so I think as you work with students to be mindful of, can you pose some positive, open-ended questions to get them to start talking, to elicit their stories. And I think you'll find that actually it's not going to take any more time than you're already spending, and it can be quite effective. As another example, I often worked freshman orientation, and we had very limited time in working with our students. When students were registering for classes and were stuck and didn't know where to do, I would actually whip out a couple of these questions and get them going in a matter of 5 minutes. And so I think you'll find that as you begin to put this into practice, it actually will come rather quickly, and it will really actually help to facilitate the advising process rather quickly.
All right, Amanda, we have another question. I would like to incorporate the appreciative advising model with students across the campus. Our faculty and staff are incorporating this model into their advising process, but I want to involve students who use these phases in everyday life. Do you have any advice for this individual?
I love that. South Dakota State University, their student government just endorsed appreciative advising to be used on their campus more fully. It was the students who loved this model. And so I do think that we can take this and use this, teach our students how to do this. Faculty and staff across institutions all over the U.S. and Canada are implementing this, but I think we're using this with students as well. I think it's so critical to help teach them how to discover their strengths, how to articulate that, how to look at their college experience and see how it's applicable then to the workforce or to their graduate or professional schools, to be able to articulate that, to be able to help them dream about their futures. Like I mentioned, sometimes students need to be given permission to dream and taught how to dream, and then helping them learn how to devise a plan of action. How can they do this, and how can we help them deliver? I think all of these phases are critical to helping students employ them within their daily life. I don't know if that helped answer your question, but I'd be happy to talk with you more specifically after the webinar if I could be of use to you to brainstorm more specifics.
All right, we now have a question about resources. So can you share, Amanda, some names of the pilot programs in order to further research them?
Yes, absolutely. I would encourage you to contact Dr. Claire Robinson at the University of South Carolina, Columbia. She oversaw the ACE program, the student coaching program there, and she actually will have more up-to-date data, but she is just a wealth of information and has wonderful ideas about how to put this into action. And then I could also reference Dr. Jenny Bloom, who's the founder of Appreciative Advising. She will have access to more people around the country who have data using this. Bryant Hudson put together the data at the University of North Carolina, Greensboro. He now is working with Credo Consulting, higher ed consulting firm. He's no longer at UNCG. But those would be 3 starting points at least, and feel free to contact me, and I'd be glad to connect you with Claire, Jenny, and others if that would be useful to you.
Okay, Amanda, we have another question. This individual says, thanks for sharing all these great tips. Many of the examples seem geared toward students who have been successful to some degree. So where do we begin with students that have had little, if any, collegiate success?
That is a really great question, and I would reference back the data that I shared. All of these were students who struggled. All of these, at the University of North Carolina, Greensboro, these were students who had actually been kicked out of the university and were invited to come back. With Claire, these were students who were on academic, probation, who were struggling. I just got off the phone yesterday with a colleague who works with honor students, and she's getting ready to implement a pilot program with honor students who are in jeopardy of dismissal because they're not doing well. So again, all of these phases can be applied, these principles are applied with all of our students, and we really are seeing success with students who are struggling. I think it's really critical that we connect with our students who are struggling. And we're finding that when we can develop that connection, students are able to develop that sense of community. They feel like we care and that they matter. When we're able to show them and help them discover their strengths and help them learn and walk through strategies that they can apply, they then begin to cultivate what we call those virtuous cycles. That success brings confidence, and small successes breed more confidence. So again, I think it's really important, and I think that as we work with our students, all of our students, and truly get to know them, that we're going to find that they're going to be more apt to feel like they're pleased with their college experience, that they're going to go out to do great things, and that we're going to see our retention levels go up on our campuses if we will start to implement this, particularly with students who are struggling.
All right, the next question is, I'm a big advocate of appreciative advising. Do you have any experience in convincing other advisors on campus to use this model? I guess students their first 2 years and then hand them off to other advisors on campus. I'd like to see a similar approach throughout the student's experience.
That is a really great question. Yes, absolutely. In an ideal world, it would be great if you could work with whoever is in charge of advising uh, globally on your campus to see if this might be a model that could be adopted across the board, for one thing, and to possibly offer some training to offer a more consistent advising experience across all 4 years. I recognize that some people might not choose to embrace this model, and so I think what you want to do is find your champions. Find those advisors who do latch onto this, who do see that this works well for them, and start there. But again, I would encourage you to possibly have that conversation with whoever might be in charge of advising more globally on your campus to see if this could be an approach that could be implemented more broadly, again, to provide a more consistent advising experience for your students.
All right, next we have a question, again, about building buy-in. So I'm a former graduate ACE coach at the University of South Carolina. Now I work with adult learners and students who are part-time, continuing education. I find it difficult to get buy-in for them to use Appreciative model. Do you have any recommendations?
That's interesting. I'd love to talk with you more to kind of get a little bit more context. I would, a couple of things that come to mind is, how is the approach used? With adults and continuing ed students, we still need to discover who they are, where they've come from. They come to us with a wealth of life experience oftentimes. They come to us with oftentimes really, really great experience, and finding that out and helping to connect that to their current experience can be really critical. I think also helping them dream. A lot of times these students are a lot more focused than even our traditional aged undergraduate students because they oftentimes know where they're headed. They're on a mission. They usually have other things going on in life, and so helping them again dream and really hone that focus can really be advantageous. So again, I don't know if I've directly answered your question, but would be happy to chat with you more about it once I have a little bit more context.
All right, so one additional question we have, Amanda, is the presentation format itself was wonderful. Can you tell me what presentation type you utilized?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question, Katie?
The presentation format itself was wonderful. Can you tell me what presentation type you utilized? I believe the question is asking about the PowerPoint format.
Right. Yes, that is a great question, and I actually have to give kudos to Stephanie Suarez, who worked with Jenny Bloom last year in the Office of Appreciative Education at the University of South Carolina, Columbia. She pretty much, she's got a Mac that she uses, but all of this stuff can be done on a PC. I don't know the exact platform, if anything, that she used, but everything that we did was in PowerPoint. Again, I'd be happy to, if you wanted to send me an email, I can check in with Stephanie and see if she can give us more specifics that I can share with you. But a lot of the stuff that I did, I just used PowerPoint and brought it in myself, just using a lot of different graphics and being creative. Stephanie also did create a template, so if you notice all of the phases that were used, she actually did create this template that we're using consistently with our appreciative advising materials.
All right, well, with that, we are just about at time. So we'll begin to wrap up now. Following this webinar, all participants will receive a short survey. We encourage you to complete this in order to provide us with feedback regarding this presentation today, in addition to your interest for future professional development opportunities sponsored by the Commission for Academic Affairs. A recording of this webinar will be available on ACPA Video on Demand within 24 hours, so we encourage you to share the recording with others as a resource. And this concludes our webinar today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you all.